Why didn't that reporter write about us? If you ever wondered why you didn't get coverage, you need to attend this episode of Strategy Talks. I'm glad you are here. Julie Kelley knows exactly what the media wants because she used to be on the inside. Now she helps rural brands right here in Vermont. Both of us are here in Vermont, and nonprofit ditch tired press releases and get the coverage they deserve. If you're ready to learn what the media wants to know so they can cover you, stay tuned. This is Strategy Talks.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. Welcome from snowy Vermont. You have two Vermonters today on Strategy Talks. And yes, it is snowing. It's November 11 and it is snowing. It's amazing. It's so pretty outside. So before I introduce you to Julie, my guest today, I want to welcome all of you who are here live with us, whether you're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, YouTube. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Let us know in the comments. If you have questions, let us know. And to those of you who always listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast, welcome as well. So I'm going to bring onto the stage with me, Julie. How are you today, Julie?
Well, I'm pretty good. I love snow. So having this first bit of snow on the ground just feels right to me.
Yeah. So you and I met back in September at a women's economic opportunity conference. You were kind of the MC of the conference. You were interviewing, I forget her, Valeria, what is her name?
Yep, Morin-van.
Yeah. And it was just an amazing conversation. You got her singing. It was wonderful. And it was really nice to shake your hand and meet you. And it's one of the things that I talk about on Strategy Talks, that very often the people that come on as guests are people that I've met in real life, because I feel like this conversation is better when it does. So today we're going to talk about media coverage strategies. And one of the things, I'm going to just lean right into what you say, stop sending press releases. Why do you say that? And what do we do instead?
Well, I say it because there are thousands of them in inboxes for reporters. And frankly, that has gotten even more true with AI. So most likely your message is never going to be picked up if you just send a press release into an inbox. So that's why I say it.
Okay.
And I started saying it about 3 years ago. And it's really interesting because people immediately jumped on it. They're like, what are you talking about? And I just think, knowing from my own experience, 20 years in a newsroom, emails were the bane of my existence. I know that sounds weird, but it's relationships that connect dots with media. And we don't talk about it enough, that you should be respecting a reporter where they are at. And when you do, they respect you, making sure that you're not just sending them garbage, but when something is coming up, you are pitching them directly.
Okay. So how do we do that, Julie? Because from my own experience, I lived in Myrtle Beach for 19 years prior to moving to Vermont. And I did, I don't even know how, build relationships with a local news channel. And I was the first social media manager in the town. And I ended up on the news like 8 or 9 times. And one time they called me. I remember dropping my kid off in elementary school in my robe. I'm in my car. And I'm getting the phone call like, hey, can you be in the studio at 8:30? Something happened with Facebook and can you come talk about it? Right. So you saying that now made me realize like they needed somebody and they knew I would show up and they knew I was dependable and they knew I was the expert on this stuff. So that's why they called me. But I don't recall how that relationship started. I'm assuming somebody introduced us and probably had a conversation. I do remember going out to lunch with one of the reporters. So maybe that's it. But how do we start that? Because now I'm in Vermont. I'm pretty rural. You're rural. How do we build a relationship with a reporter? And I'm thinking media coverage can be anything, right? Somebody who works at the news station, but somebody who works for a newspaper. How do we get started on that?
I want to say that you did it right. When I say that you meet them where they are at, that's exactly what it is. You are available on their time. You are available when news breaks and they want to talk about it. And I've experienced that with clients. I worked with Vermont Nut Free Chocolates and I walked into their facility and they had 80% women manufacturing their chocolates. And I said, well, that's unique. And I put together 5 women who I thought had interesting stories and who were willing to talk. And then when a Wall Street Journal reporter sent out a message to her, like favorite contacts, and said, do you know anybody who's had flexible schedules and it's really helped them personally? In 30 seconds, I sent her my 5 people. And she emailed back and she was like, wait a minute, how do you even respond so quickly? And that goes to knowing what reporters want and need and when they need it. And so it often companies think, oh, we want to tell this story, but actually you need to figure out how your story fits into the stories being told by media at that moment. So how do you do it?
Yes.
I think one of the most thoughtful ways is sending them a message. I start almost every email to reporters who know me really well, talking about something I've seen on that they've done, recent work of theirs. Like I care about the work they're doing. And that goes beyond any client that I serve. So being human with a reporter who is very human, we forget those are people who are fighting to meet deadlines and hit marks. Like in television, we knew exactly who we were talking to. At one station I worked at, we had the data. We knew how old she was. We knew how much money she made. We knew how much college education she had. We knew how many children still lived in her home. So we are media. I say we because I will never not be a journalist. We are very aware of our audience. And in some ways, as a company, you need to be aware of how you fit in. And you did it brilliantly. You did exactly what a reporter wants. Most likely the people you see on there either have amazing PR people who know how to pitch, or they have built relationships with meaning. And when they get the call, they get out of their robe and they jump on TV.
I showed up. I did. But since I've moved to Vermont, I wasn't really focused on local and I wasn't really focused on, what was happening here until AI started. And you and I were just talking in the green room, I've done retreats right here at my home, 3-day retreats, teaching women how to get on camera, how to create reels called the Reel Retreat. And that's been really amazing. And meeting other Vermonters and teaching locally and then bringing in the AI part, which is what you and I were talking about, has been really good. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity, kind of what happened 15 years ago with social media, where initially people were using it just for their personal gain. I was so excited, social media, my family lives in Europe. Oh my God, I can, WhatsApp with my nieces and nephews and my siblings. And that was great. And then FaceTime came along and all that stuff, social media, Facebook. But now I kind of feel like that's what's that new thing that's happening with AI, that initially people were using it like Google, right? They were just using it. But now people are like, well, I can also use this for business. I can also use this as a strategic partner or to come up with ideas. And so now that piece of teaching, I feel like deja vu with social media and what's happening in AI. So that's interesting. So you just kind of gave us an example of when you got the, media coverage for this chocolate company. Can you kind of give us a little bit more information about what that pitch looked like? Or, they were looking for something, but what did you had 5 women ready to talk. What did that look like that you literally could send something to them in 5 seconds?
So what a pitch looks like is the most critical information, and it is not wordy at all. It typically adds some data to add beef to whatever I am hoping that they might consider reporting on. In that case, I literally had, what was really interesting about that is marketing people often say to me, nobody will talk, because I think a lot of brand stories should be driven by the people in a building.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, and my unique ability to walk into, say, a manufacturing facility and just connect with people, I said, well, why don't you just ask? Like, all I want to do is just chat with them. And she's like, okay. And she came back and she's like, 5 of them said yes. And I was like, wonderful.
Yeah.
And so first we kind of had a conversation. So I learned some information about them. That sheet was literally 3 lines about each employee. That is a starting point for being ready. But you also have to be able to identify the employees that reporters would want. And I'll give you an example. I can pretty much walk into any manufacturing facility or business and identify very, very quickly who should be doing some of the talking, whose stories really would connect audience. And that is simply because for 20 years, all I did was walk into buildings and assess, like, who am I going to talk to as a reporter?
Sure.
Who's going to be my best interview? So I was in a global manufacturing facility in the middle of nowhere, and I walk in, and we had just done interviews, and I had just done media training for executives who had connection to community. It was wonderful. At the same time, when I walked in and they're telling me we need more employees, like, we have jobs here. I walk in and I happen to pass this young guy, and I'm like, hey, and he stopped to start chatting with me. I will never forget Johnny. As a PR person, Johnny is like in my back pocket for when I'm working with a client. If you hire me and pay me, I am going to make sure you've got the right people in my back pocket so that you are ready to present to the media, present to high school students you hope someday will come take your tech jobs, present to your board of directors, present to the legislature. Those are all things that I help people figure out. Well, in this case, Johnny starts talking to me and he's like, I've worked here 8 years. He was 28 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, ding, 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 right? Like, right away, I'm like, Johnny bought a house in his community. He's married. Johnny loves his job. Johnny also was kind of hip, like, he had tattoos and he was just, his vibe was so cool. And I literally sat there and I said to myself, Johnny should be the one who goes talk to high school and tech grads. Johnny should be the one that you figure out how to tell that story and pitch it to the media, because that is really diving into a company. Not breaking ground on a facility. Tell Johnny's story. Like, that's exactly what rural areas need right now. We need a ton of Johnnies. And so I think with my brain, it goes beyond just media coverage. It even goes to the point where when you're looking at your marketing strategy, what does it feel like to drive up to your building? If I feel uncomfortable, then the Johnnies you hope to get, they will be uncomfortable too. Because in rural America, we're just different that way. we want to feel comfortable in the environments. We don't just like trumps in and we're like, hey, we're here. We're ready to take a job. That's not the way we roll in rural. And if you don't get it, then your company is not getting it the way that they need to, particularly today. Because today, you better understand me really well, because I've got a million places to go look.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great example of figuring out who can be kind of like the spokesperson, not necessarily for everybody, but for, you figured out that he would be a great spokesperson to lead that employee search, right, in high schools and tech area. So I love that you look to somebody like Johnny to have and be on camera. And not everybody has to be on camera to get media coverage, right? Sometimes it's a write-up, but it's still an interview. How do you
Or can I interject one more thing?
Yeah.
Or social media.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't forget.
Yeah, no, that's my thing. Yeah, no, for sure.
Meeting the next generation where they are. And I think in rural areas, and forgive me for interrupting.
No, that's okay.
We forget what we value. So if my grandma tells me, hey, that company's hiring, I think that's a good company. I heard it on the news today. I heard that on the TV news today, because television news is still very valuable.
Yeah.
Or my buddy says, you know what? I just started working at this place, and this is one of my favorite things I ever pitched to a global company. Hey, you should make the first day of hunting season a holiday. I'm like, you want to attract employees? Meet them with what they are. So anyway, I don't mean to interrupt, but
I think that is great. And that shows that you know who you're talking to. And if you are watching this or listening to this, if there's anything you get out of this, is put their hat on you, go into their place, go into the manufacturing place, talk to all the people, figure out what makes them tick, and know your ideal client. As you said, when you were on the news, you knew exactly how many children still lived at home and how old a woman was that you were talking to on the other side of the lens. That's really in social media too, but in marketing, that is our job, to know exactly who we're talking to and then pitch them the right story. So if you're watching this and you're a marketer, this is something, even if you're not in PR, this is something that you can do. From my own experience, one of the things that I used to do, and it's changed now, and now it's called, I think, Hero instead of Hero, but I had success with several of my small local clients back in South Carolina that I got featured in national media coverage, because I was watching and I would always look at the pitches and go, well, this could be good for this. And one of them was, and I just want to give that as an example. There was a pitch about, I think it was back in August one year, upcoming breast cancer awareness month in October. Do you know somebody who has a different type of story? And one of my clients was a breast cancer survivor, and she had a tea room. And so she would have a special tea, all pink and all for breast cancer survivors. And she did it for free every year. And so we pitched that idea to them as, this is what we're doing. And they wrote about it. And so she was, written up in, I forgot what magazine it was.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So you can also, if you're in marketing, even if you're not, focus on PR. This is something that should be on your radar, and you should be always looking for opportunities. I have sent pitches that I see to different clients. I've had a client who's a lawyer. When they're looking for somebody, specific about family law, I would send her the thing and say, I'm as a social media manager, I'm not doing that pitch for her. You would, Julie, but I'm like, here you go. This is up your alley. You should pitch this, and you should do it today, because I think you would be really good for them. So you can, for me, it's like giving them those opportunities. And I think being aware that they're out there, that is one way to connect with them.
And I think with my work, typically it is strategy in a bigger sense. And I would say it's because this brain can't do it any other way. Like, I can't not see all the other parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how my brain works. And so it's so much broader. And I always say, when people pay me, they are literally paying for this brain.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. So what are people looking? What is media looking? What are they scanning for in a pitch, Julie? Like, what gets an automatic yes? What's get an automatic no? And what is a maybe? If somebody does send a pitch or send an email, you already said, talk about what you saw them do, what a story they did. What is an automatic no? What is a yes, maybe? What is it that they're looking for? What would you be looking for? Or what did you used to look for?
I wanted something that was unique or different.
Okay.
I wanted it to match what we were currently talking about. Okay.
So
when I've been thinking about this with Beta Technologies. So we just had this incredible, public offering of Beta, the airline.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there are so many more story pitches out there, not for Beta, for the rest of like Vermont, to tell us a bigger story. So what does a reporter want? They want the next angle. So if you see something big happening, they want the next angle of it. They're going into that next meeting and they're all sitting around and they're going, what's the hot topics today? And how are we going to advance it in a meaningful, newsworthy way? And that doesn't mean you're an innovation company and you're like, hey, look at my product. That's not what I mean. I mean, you're the state of Vermont and you're like sitting there going, how do we tell this story about Vermont innovation in a way that is impactful and pitch it to the New York Times or whatever? I also want to say, and I will get to your what is in a pitch. Sometimes national media isn't what a company needs. And I've experienced that, as particularly focusing on rural marketing and branding. I once had a vice president of marketing say to me, we want to reach a 30-mile radius. And I thought to myself, we want the 30-mile radius to know about us. And I thought to myself, there's like one local newspaper. That's not how you're going to reach the 30-mile radius. In rural areas, whether it's Montana or Minnesota or Maine or Vermont, you better go to your TV station and find a way to inform the largest audience, because that's what that 30-mile radius in rural is looking for. My pitch documents, I'll answer your question. They literally are like, this is the newsworthy angle. Here are the people. Here's the data behind it, the 3 facts that I think are most important for you to know. Here's the people I can get for you to be interviewed, and they're not all inside the company I'm working with, or they are different than the same people you always hear over and over again. Because I'll tell you, journalists really, they want the characters. They want the people who are making your company special. And by them talking to those people, you are then sharing your culture of your company, which then you can see how that goes down the line of the next person hearing, like, I want to work there, or they're doing really good things for our community or whatever. Then I say, here are the video opportunities. And then I say, let me help you however I can. Like, you name the time. I'll make all of this happen for you. Because again, what people don't realize about what reporters are dealing with, I never stopped. My entire day was deadlines, decisions, leads, what's next? How are we going to do it? How do we get it back in? So that's why that reporter counted on you that morning. I used to have a political guy two desks down at WCAX. And I mean, when he needed sound and he needed an interview on a topic for the legislature, he got on this and he started texting. And who's going to respond to me and meet me where I need them to be? So I would say availability,
Okay.
newsworthiness, not wasting a reporter's time because they don't have any time, and then giving them what they need for to make a story happen in a valuable way for their audience.
Okay. That I love that. I love that. So following on that, what do you say to a small town brand or founder that might listen to this? There's lots of rural America left. Lots of rural America that are doing amazing things where there's manufacturing and that are doing their own thing, but that could use some media coverage, but they might feel that they're not big enough for media attention. What would you say to them first to convince them they're worthy, and to how they would either dig up the stories or who they should think about working with? Because everybody has a story to tell, right? How would you make them feel better about that? And how would you convince them that, yes, you're worth it?
Oh, it's the biggest hurdle we have to get over in rural is that we are so humble naturally, and we are actually taught to just put our heads down and do the work. So people build multi-million-dollar companies and they literally put their head down and do the work, and you never even know about it. I would say that it is critical to your entire community and region for you to tell your story. We need people to know how vibrant we are. We are lighting it up in rural America. We're lighting it up, but people don't give us the credit for it. And then we don't get the funding for it. And it just keeps going. And then the narratives of what rural is, the negative narratives continue. So you are doing a service to your entire community and to your own business by allowing us to know what you are building. Every time I hear of another company in Vermont that's doing some little thing that's in like a major, spaceship, I'm like, what? And so one, we have to, for the well-being of our own communities, for the well-being of your company, because you need employees. You want to be the place to work. So you are setting yourself up and establishing yourself that way. And what was your last question?
How do you convince them that they're good enough? Like
every company is good enough to a reporter. And in fact, they want to do stories with companies they have never heard of, because that's what's interesting to a reporter. We want to uncover what is new. We don't want to tell the same old story.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It still feels sometimes like pulling teeth and saying, are you sure? Are you sure? But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Julie, I think you've given us so much information. If somebody is out there and they're like, I want media coverage, but I don't really know. This is my last question to you. Do you help somebody set goals? For example, I've heard you talk about, media coverage can help you get more employees. Media coverage can help you. What are some of the things, or, real quick, what are some of the goals that you can set with them? What could happen? I guess maybe what I'm asking you, what are some of the outcomes that people can expect when they get that media coverage? Because, we usually start with goals when we start with strategy. So tell us some of the outcomes real quick, if you have any. And then we're going to talk about how people can connect with you.
First, I want to also say that how to identify a story within your own company is, what do you go home and tell the people in your kitchen? Because that's the most interesting thing happening in your company, because you care enough to go share it.
Okay.
Second, the outcomes are that, one, you do end up getting more employees if you are consistent. You can't do a one and done. It doesn't work that way. Okay. That's not how it works. You have to be consistent, and you can see brands nationally and locally in your own community that do that well, and you hear about them over and over and over again. They're basically just taking the opportunity. Number two, if your product is not the pitch, your product is part of a story, and that's what you pitch. And so you find that angle within your product that tells a bigger story that a reporter is interested in, so that then your product sells. And also brand awareness. If I don't know you exist, or I have generational thinking about your company, which has happened to me, if I don't know what happens in that big blue box up on the hill, then how in the world is anybody going to ever want to come work for you or understand the commitment you're making to your community or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to tell your story. All right, Julie, how can people connect with you? Where are you most active on social media?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. It's
Okay.
primarily what I use. It's so effective. And I actually think LinkedIn is a key part of marketing today for every company, but you don't do it through company page, you do it through your own. So I would say just meet me on LinkedIn and start conversations there. That's the easiest way. I do have a website, juliekelleycoms.org. But meet me on LinkedIn. Like,
All right.
let's chat and see how I might be able to help. And I am not, I'm not an agency. I'm just myself. And but this brain is big, and I enjoy
I love it.
using it.
I love it. Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you connect with Julie. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn and you're watching a replay, if you have questions for Julie or myself, put that hashtag replay in the comments, and then we will be happy to answer your questions. And then, yeah, connect with Julie or myself if you have follow-up questions. But this was amazing. Stop the press releases, guys, and start pitching the real stories behind the company, especially in rural America. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Thank you, Julie, so much.
Thank
See you all
you.
later. Bye, everybody.